It's good to have you back. Wow, I don't know where to begin. Those of you who've been listening to the show for a long time might remember the name William Cooper. Started having him on my show, I think it was 1987, 1988. And he was kind of new to radio. He had a book out called Behold a Pale Horse. And he claimed to be with the government, or was with the government, when aliens were captured at Area 51. He captivated my audience. He blew people away. We had some very strange and compelling guests on over the years, but this guy, man, oh man, I'm telling you, he probably got more requests to be on the show, and we'd have him on maybe 4 times a year. And that continued to about 2001 when he was killed by government officials. And I have a segment just when the government was getting ready to pretty much what he predicted, and you're going to hear it. This was the interview, maybe a week or two before he was shot dead, and he was talking about how they were coming on his property. I really can't give you the whole history of William Cooper, but trust me, go to Google. William Cooper is, just put that in, and you'll see Behold a Pale Horse. I have dozens and dozens of hours of recordings of William Cooper. And this one, here's a segment from that very last show before they killed him. This is the way it was in 2001. Some people call him a wacko. Other people say he is a hero. And I think more people who do the research, more and more people are in the latter. They do think he is a hero. First of all, this show has been investigating the UFO cover-ups and conspiracies for a long time. You've seen the X-Files. You've probably seen many specials on UFOs and Area 51. Well, William Cooper is the guy who started the whole thing. I started having him on the show back in 1989. He blew the socks off of the ratings. I gave him a hard time. To this day, as much as I like William Cooper, I don't agree with everything he says. Sometimes I don't even understand it, and sometimes because of laziness and because I have so many things I'm doing on every show, I do research on the upcoming show. I don't get too deep into a lot of stuff. So maybe I don't have things accurate. And he'll correct me. He has no problem yelling at me at all. And that's fine, because I want to hear all sides of the story. So does he. Let me tell you a little bit about him, what we're doing tonight. We'll be taking your calls. William Cooper served with the Strategic Air Command, United States Air Force. He held a secret clearance working on B-52 bombers, KC-135 refueling aircraft, and Minuteman missiles. He held top secret clearance, achieving the rank of first-class petty officer, QMI E6. And after 8 years of Navy service, he got an honorable discharge in 1975. William Cooper was awarded several medals for his leadership and heroism during combat, during 2 with V for Valor, including 2 with V for Valor. Now, in these years, when he had all this access, he saw incredible documents, mostly classified, and discovered the existence of secret societies, UFO conspiracies, government cover-ups. He wrote a book that is an all-time classic. Again, this book, if anything, was what started the whole X-Files mania. Behold a Pale Horse. The book deals with secret governments, UFOs, Area 51, mystery schools, various government conspiracy, black helicopters, you name it. And he's had problems before with people trying to capture him. By the way, he has another book coming out, and he has a shortwave radio show every night, Monday through Thursday, on his own. But now, as we speak, the FBI and other government types have vowed to get him before April 15th. They called his daughter, and they tried to get his daughter to give him information so they could get him. Just a few nights ago, his dog and himself kind of outsmarted some of the feds because they were kind of closing in on the hills around his house, and they were doing hooting sounds. This is all on his website. So he started hooting back and confused them. But anyway, he's still free and doing well. William Cooper, welcome to the show. There you go, William. Welcome to the show.
Good evening.
Good evening. Nice to have you on, man. Wow, I think the best way to start is, if you would, tell the audience the whole story, starting with when they called Jessica and what they want, what do you suspect might happen, worst case scenario. Where do we stand today? Take all the time you want, William.
Okay. Well, it actually started many years ago when I discovered there was no law passed by Congress requiring anybody to file and pay income taxes. And I didn't believe that, so I called the IRS and asked them to tell me what the law was that required me to file and pay the income tax. They couldn't do it. And I was dumbfounded, so I started asking other people, people who should know, lawyers and tax attorneys and CPAs and accountants. I went to H&R Block, who do all your tax returns, and asked them, what's the law that requires me to file and pay income tax? And nobody, and I mean nobody, can produce such a law, not even my senators and representatives. And so I told the IRS, I'm not going to file and I'm not going to pay until you can show me a law that requires me to do it. And it would be very simple. I mean, if there is such a law, why wouldn't they have an interest in producing it so that there would be no controversy? And I'm not the only one. There's about 65 million people who no longer file or pay the income tax, and now businesses are beginning to catch on that they're not required by law to withhold any monies from anybody's paycheck. In fact, it's against the law for them to do so unless they've been named as a withholding agent by the federal government, and no business has ever been named as such a withholding agent. So I've challenged them in letters. I've challenged them on the air. Please, just do something very simple. Produce the law that requires me to file and pay the income tax. If you can't do it, I'm not going to file, and I'm not going to pay it. And so they absolutely refuse to produce anything. So I took them to court, sued them, in the United States District Court in Phoenix, Arizona, and was winning. They had perjured themselves twice. They were unable to produce any of the documentations that I asked for in my lawsuit. And so they went to a grand jury and lied to the grand jury, did not tell the grand jury that I had requested them to produce the law that requires me to file and pay the income tax. They did not tell the grand jury that I was prosecuting them in a lawsuit in United States District Court and was winning. And they lied and obtained indictments against myself and my wife. If the grand jury had known all these things, they never would have brought indictments. They did not allow me to testify to the grand jury. The IRS was up against the wall. I had them in a very, very bad situation. And the only way to stop me from winning that lawsuit was to bring warrants for my arrest so that I could no longer go into court. And so I had to notify the judge that I was withdrawing the suit against the IRS, hoping to be able to file it again sometime later. I never heard another word from the court, so I have no idea what the judge did. Not too long ago, Agent Fillerup, who was the local FBI agent up here in the White Mountains area, was transferred, and they brought two new agents in. And the word that sifted to me was that they were brought in to replace Agent Fillerup, who had a great deal of respect for me, in order to bring me in. My daughter called, I guess 2-3 weeks ago, and told me that the U.S. Marshals were really bothering her and threatening her and wanted her to draw a diagram of all the rooms in the house, and that they had been asked by the Internal Revenue Service to bring me in on or before, preferably before April the 15th.
Real quick, how old is she?
She's 20 years old.
Okay, just want to get an idea. Okay, go ahead.
She'll be 21 April the 2nd.
Okay, so they were threatening her. I mean, what can they do to her? I mean, she's, has nothing to do with what you do.
The government does not operate within the law anymore. We're talking about tyranny here. So she absolutely refused to cooperate. In fact, won't even talk to them anymore. And the night of the 13th, which was just a few days ago, I went to bed on the 13th, and I can't go into too much detail because I don't want people to know exactly what it is, but I have really set up this entire area so that nobody can even come near without me knowing it.
Even outside of your property?
Yes.
Okay.
And these devices began to alert me at about 2 a.m., which would be the morning of the 14th. And between 2 a.m. and 2:15, I managed to pinpoint with the night vision 6 men armed with, it could have been automatic or semi-automatic rifles, but definitely of the assault, of what people normally would call the assault-type rifle, were proceeding across the hill toward my house. And so once I had pinpointed them and made sure that there was nobody else anywhere else, and that's exactly where the alarms were coming from, and there were 3 militia sentries up here besides myself, I managed to locate one with the night vision who was signaling me that there were intruders on the hill, and in fact he was in their rear, and had another sentry in their rear and then one on their east flank. And I left the house with a MAC-90 and 3 30-round clips of ammunition and went below the crest of the hill around to the east side, about 60 yards from the front door. And these guys, I don't know who these guys were. I don't know where they were from. I don't know what agency they represented. They may have even been bounty hunters. I have no idea. But they were hooting like owls. It would start with the guy all the way over on the west side, and he would do his little owl hoot, and then the next guy a couple of seconds later, and then the next, until there were 6. And I remember thinking, this is the most incredible thing I've ever seen. These guys would have been dead in 5 minutes in Vietnam.
Was it a good imitation of a howl, at least?
Oh yeah, they were very
okay.
Very
all right. So you obviously knew something was not right here. Okay. So go ahead.
Yeah. So there were now 4 of us, 2 of us in their rear, and then myself and another militia sentry to the east, directly to the east of them, and they were swinging around in this sort of like a half moon formation toward the house. I have no idea what they had planned to do when they got there, but all of a sudden I had a brainstorm, and when it got to the center, I would hoot like an owl, and then the sentries caught on, and they were hooting like owls, and these guys didn't catch on for a few minutes until they were almost, on the property, on the actual property of the house. And then they just stopped dead in their tracks because obviously they had figured it out that
too many hoots.
4 extra hoots, yeah.
Yeah, too many hoots.
And in places where nobody should have been, at least nobody in their team. And so they stopped dead in their tracks. And about that time, the security lights around the house came on, and these are 600-watt lights, and just lit up the whole top of the hill and caught several of them in the light. And one of them hit the ground. I mean, he just dove headfirst to the ground right in front of Crusher, who was on his cable. And it was lucky he fell about 3 inches short of the total length of Crusher's cable because he was looking right into a mouthful of the biggest teeth you ever saw in your life.
And you trained your dog to be silent.
Yes.
That's
he's
interesting.
Absolutely silent at night. And it must have just scared this guy half to death because he was doing something like Michael Jackson's moonwalk, only on his belly.
Yeah, well,
and they all just panicked because they knew they had somebody behind them and somebody to the east of them, and now this dog comes out of nowhere. And Crusher's a huge Rottweiler, and they broke ranks and just ran down the side of the hill, and we just laughed and laughed and laughed. I mean, it was hilariously
well, it's
funny.
At least
it was also a very dangerous.
Well, if the feds are out to get you, they got your place surrounded, they vow to get you by the 15th, a little bit of levity, I guess, is welcome, a little laugh here and there. But seriously, though, we don't want another Ruby Ridge. We don't want another Waco. And your conviction, you're not going to be taken. You're not going to, just walk out. They're going to have to get you with force. You've said that.
No, they're going to have to kill me.
And you're going to try to kill them before they kill you.
Well, I will certainly defend myself. Absolutely, that's my right to do that. I will not bow to tyranny, and they're going to have to kill me. And if they kill me, they lose.
Do you really think that they would try to do something after knowing what the publicity from the other disasters in the past has cost them? Do you think they would try this at all?
Well, see, Alan, they're between a rock and a hard spot. I can prove every single thing that I've said tonight. You know that I never make statements without proof, and I have the proof. And if any of your listeners don't believe it, have them call the IRS, call their senators, call their representatives, call the Justice Department, and just ask a simple question: what is the law that requires me to file and pay the income tax? Very simple question. And if there is such a law, it should be a very simple answer. But they won't get an answer because there is no such law. Not only that, but the Internal Revenue Service is not an agency of the Department of Treasury, and it's not an agency of the United States government. Now, that sounds really weird, but if you look in the United States Code, under the Department of the Treasury, it must list in the United States Code every agency of the United States Treasury, and you'll find that there are three who claim to be agencies of the United States Treasury Department, or the Department of the Treasury, I should say, that are not listed. That's the Internal Revenue Service, Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms, and the Secret Service. They are not listed at all. And if they're not listed in the law, they are not agencies. We've also found a court record where attorneys for the United States government, United States attorneys, said actually in court under oath that they flatly deny that the Internal Revenue Service is an agency of the United States government. And we're going to have that on our website pretty soon, and anybody can get a duplicate of it from the National Archives simply by filing a request and be willing to pay whatever their fees are. They're reasonable.
Just some logistical questions, William. Do you ever leave your property?
Well, if I did, I wouldn't tell you, especially on national radio.
Well, I know they're probably listening, but I mean, so you are, for all intents and purposes, you're pretty much stuck in your house.
No, not at all.
Okay, we'll leave that at that. Let me ask you this, because I like you. I mean, we don't always agree. I would never do this myself, obviously, but I respect your opinion. But come on, I don't want you to die. Jessica doesn't want you to die.
Well, all those guys in the Revolutionary War, they didn't want to die either, but they didn't want to be subject to the tyranny of King George.
True, but what's more important, your life or just being right on making a point?
No, it's not. It's not being right. That's not what it's about. It's about opposing tyranny.
Yes.
Tyranny must be opposed. It cannot be allowed to prevail. We're Americans. This whole nation was based upon the opposition to tyranny, based upon a belief in and the dedication to freedom. And by God, I'm not going to let all those people in the history of this country who have died to keep me from tyranny and who have died to make sure that I can live free, I'm not going to let them down by bowing to tyranny and helping to enslave us. So there comes a time where you have to understand that if you want to be free, you must be willing to die for it, or you cannot and will not ever be free.
Yeah, but your loved ones may not feel that way, And
well,
they're the ones.
Sure.
They're the
I'm
ones.
sure that George Washington and Patrick Henry and Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, all of the people who served in the Revolutionary War and served in the War of 1812 and fought all of this nation's battles, I'm sure that they had relatives who didn't want them to die. But we wouldn't be living in a free nation today if they didn't. We wouldn't even have been a nation if they weren't willing to die for what they believed in.
No, and I agree with that and respect that. By the way, have they interfered with your broadcast at all or your communications? I know you're on the phone, so But how about your shortwave broadcast every night, 10 p.m. Eastern Time on WBCQ, which is shortwave 7415?
Well, there's certainly been attempts to jam the broadcast, and anybody who listens to the program knows that they have, from time to time, actively jammed or attempted to jam the broadcast, and sometimes to the point where you couldn't even hear it.
What would it take, and I think I know your answer because you already said what you wanted, but what would it take to get you to allow the feds in your home and to cooperate with them? What would it take?
Nothing.
Nothing. You already said that if they showed you a law that you were required to pay tax.
If they show me the law that requires me to file and pay taxes, yes. Very simple.
And you've been asking for this for years. And when was the last time you paid taxes?
Not just me, but many people have been asking for this for years.
How many years now has it been since you paid income tax?
It's been, let me see, this is 2001. It's been 14 years, I'd say.
Mm-hmm. All right, we have a lot of calls. We're not going to take them yet. We'll take them later. 800 Rock Talk is our number. 800-762-5825. We're not just going to talk about the situation he finds himself in, which is worthy of discussion, but we're also going to talk about other things William Cooper can compel you with, predictions he's made. Let's pick one of those things right now. You did on a show say shortly after the election, and I don't know if you gave this, if you were referring to Bush, but you said we were going to have an economic disaster.
Yeah.
And why don't you update us on that? What are we in for, and how did you know, and what's going to happen?
Well, it's not just in for. I mean, it's already happening. I mean, just last week, every index of every stock exchange was down. The NASDAQ lost 7.9% of its total value that existed a week ago Friday, and the Dow lost 7.7% of its total value, and that's just in 1 week. I mean, the market's been dropping for a while now, since the election, as a matter of fact.
Since the election?
Which I predicted on your show would happen
and
if
long
the Republicans won the election.
And you did this way before the election, so I know that. But what is it? Are you saying it did happen after Bush, but didn't this stuff happen even during Clinton? It was just when Bush got in, it kind of kicked in, or does he have something to do with it?
No, Bush has absolutely nothing to do with it.
Right.
For the whole 8 years of the Clinton administration, and I told you this on your broadcast, they were lying to us about the state of the economy. For God's sake, every year, Clinton claimed that every year, and he said, and he quoted the same numbers, every single year of his administration, he claimed to have created 8 million new jobs. Over 8 years, that should have been 64 million new jobs. Where are they? 64 million new jobs.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No way. It was a lie. It was a lie. And during the Clinton administration, they turned their heads while these whiz kids with 2 computers and internet connection and a Wall Street brokerage firm as a partner floated hundreds of millions of stock on companies that didn't have any assets whatsoever. Were worthless.
President Clinton, former President Clinton,
was the guy. Wrong. That's against the law.
And of course, he's your buddy. He was the guy who said, and I'll never forget this, William Cooper is the most dangerous man on the radio.
He's called me the most dangerous radio host in America.
Yeah.
In a White House memo, which Rush Limbaugh read on the air.
Yeah, he did. All right, we're going to take a break here. We have almost an hour left at 1-800-ROCK-TALK, 1-800-762-5825. We'll talk about secret governments, even an update on UFOs and Area 51 and mystery schools and conspiracies of all kind. Behold, a Pale Horse is still in print. And there you go, flashback 10 years. Just about my last interview with William Cooper, I think a day or two before he actually got shot, I spoke to him briefly on my afternoon show. It was a head blower. The guy was just amazing. I don't know what to make of him. He get very angry at me sometimes, and sometimes, he was very thankful It was because of our national audience that his audience grew, and next thing you know, he's doing a shortwave show, and he becomes infamous. And to this day, you know, he produced some amazing radio. Well, there you go, little surprise, kind of a memory of William Cooper. And one of these days, I'll dig out the tapes where he's talking about aliens and stuff, and he had a big change in life. At one time, he did talk about aliens existing and UFOs, and then kind of made a change. He didn't want to talk about aliens anymore. He wanted to talk about government cover-ups and taxes and things of that nature. Anyway, we'll take a break. We got time for one more great song. Don't go away.